G'day guys, huida, kia ora, my name is Wildkard. Yes, the greatest rivalry tour, the first game, is now in the banks, and the mighty All Blacks has put out I think many people will perceive this as a massive upset over the Springboks. And, one of the things I did talk about before the game is that I do think that the preparation coming into this game is probably more advantageous to the All Blacks than it is to the Springboks. And as a result, I really don't blame the Springboks so much in terms of not having everything clicking and running in that first game. And I do expect that the Springboks will be better in the upcoming test matches, and the fatigue will be a factor going into the next few rounds for the All Blacks. Now, with that being said, in this part of the world, in Super Rugby, this is a really, really important win, not just for New Zealand rugby, but for like Super Rugby and Australian rugby here as well, because we are facing massive competition for Rugby League. They're looking at building an extra Rugby League team at Christchurch, and that's just gonna put a massive, dent into rugby union in this part of the world as well. And a win like this is desperately, desperately needed for all of us in this part of the world, and to get us, a little bit of a breathing room from, not just competition for Rugby League, but competition from Europe and the French constantly poaching our players and grass cutting our youngsters and all that sort of stuff. This is one of the ways to really give us a breathing space. So if you're a South African, don't be too upset about this, because this is in the end of the day, I do think that both teams has come out of this match in a better place that they went into it. I think one of the most important things, if you are a South African, is the importance of this game heading into the Rugby World Cup. Now, I did just mention the preparation. I do think that the preparation in this game really lacked enough, strong competition leading into one of the biggest matches ever, right? And this could be a problem at the Rugby World Cup, because you literally have a pool stage that is just easier than the July Test series, and then the semi-final, a round of 16 game that could be pretty easy as well, and then go straight into the quarterfinal against the All Blacks potentially, or maybe even the Wallabies, and that could be a death sentence for the South Africans if they don't deal with it today. And coming up to the World Cup, that could be, suddenly your team is not connected because you haven't played rugby as a team, cohesive team, for 2 months or something. And then suddenly you're going to choke, and that's something you really don't want to happen. So for this experience of underpreparedness to happen at this point against the All Blacks in a match not outside of the World Cup is really, really, really good for the Springboks. And it gives Rassie a lot to think about going into the World Cup, especially going to that quarterfinal, most likely against the All Blacks. And that's something that, keep in mind as well. All Blacks, as a result of this win, got massive amounts of points taken from the Springboks, jumped up to the first place with 94 points. That's probably the highest the All Blacks has been for a very, very long time. And the Springboks has held that number one position as well for quite some time at this point. And it is just, losing at home. You lose essentially double the amount of, not double, but you lose extra points for being at home. So that is a one factor to consider. So there was a lot of interesting things that came out of this game. I think number one thing I would like to talk about. So in the post-match, there was, a lot of fans complaining about the Springboks. One of the decisions the Springboks did in the second half was ask multiple times in the post-match function is that, why did you scrum so much? Why didn't you take the 3, Dr. Rassie? It was asked multiple times in various different sort of, ways. And Rassie didn't actually reveal the real reason, but I thought they did the right thing. I literally wrote down in my notes in my review that I thought just Dr. Rassie at his mass brilliance going for these scrums. If you don't understand it, you would think he's kind of stupid and kind of wasted opportunities. But let me tell you, what was happening was, at least Ethan de Groot came off early with the HIA concussion, so he could not be put back onto the field. And George Bauer has already played, more than 50 minutes or whatever. And then if he had given away a yellow card and got sent off, the All Blacks will have to go to uncontested scrum. By initiating uncontested scrum, the law states that you have to lose an additional player, which means 1 yellow card against George Bauer will result in 2 send-offs. And I think that is what the Springboks was aiming to do. And I think just, it was just the execution just didn't quite get there. I think they were really, really close to get that yellow card. Maybe like one more scrum penalty probably would have done it. And then, the All Blacks got that huge, turnover in that scrum, for wheeling, for stepping around. Rassie did say that he agreed with the referee's call. But I just think that a lot of these complaints, people are not quite understanding the issue here. And Rassie, the brilliant master strategist, don't want to reveal too much of the logic in terms of the team, and also, he doesn't need to, right? He doesn't need to explain himself why these things were decided, and and let people speculate on all sorts of stuff. So he was just in the post match, didn't really explain why they did it, and and it's on surface there's a lot of complaint, but in reality it's much more nuanced than what people were making it out to be. And I do think that they made the right decision. I genuinely, if they had gone for the penalties, I would be, it first of all does not guarantee you're going to win the game. The reason is not because you didn't take the penalty. The reason is because you weren't able to execute consistently. You weren't able to score, right? You had opportunities after the scrum penalties to score, and you couldn't score. That's the problem, not because you didn't take the penalty. And if you, even if you take the penalties, I didn't think that would eventually work out for you to win anyway. And I think that's just, really, really, I think that's just really something that people, some of the complaints, I think a little bit incorrect. Another thing people were complaining about was Sacha Fangberg and Zulu, and his consistency. Even Dan Carter talked about how he's not really consistent. I do think the problem doesn't really lie on Sacha. If you watch him in the URC, he plays the same style. He likes to carry the ball and just play what's in front of him. And that's the beauty of this play, because he can play heads-up rugby. And that is a talent, very difficult to teach. And, and it takes a lot of guts and spontaneity to do that sort of stuff. And also have the skill sets to execute it, right? And what's happening is it takes time for players around them to accommodate to that style. And if you don't have players playing around, reacting to the decision making, you end up being you end up in a situation where the ball are getting, people are knocking on the ball left and right, and people are not really following up with the thought process that's going behind it. But the thing is, I do feel that the style that was played in the first test more suited for 100 Pollard. There was a lot of up and unders, a lot of static style of rugby, a lot of forwards muscle rugby, and the Sacha style wasn't really utilized anyway. So I was surprised that he started at all. I thought maybe they would have started minding the block and having 100 Pollard on the bench, or even started 100 Pollard straight away. But they made that decision, and I think that it shows trust on his talent for Rassie. And I do think that some of the criticism is a little bit too harsh on Sacha and his performance there as well. And Rassie also pointed out, exposed that the All Blacks were stripping the ball in the tackle, and that's why there were so many knock-ons. And that's not and it's not because the South Africans were having poor handling, and he thinks that it was he revealed that it was a strategy of stripping that's led to a lot of the problem, and not because the ball was slippery. So that's also really, really interesting to see and being talked about. And also the All Blacks, I reveal something as well. So we often hear the pundits talk about how the Springboks are too big and they're not that fit. And the All Blacks actually at halftime said that they were going to just stick to their game plan and trust that the big 4-pack was going to tire themselves out. I am not sure if that was the case, that the Springboks lost. I do think that the reserves from the Springboks probably wasn't performing at the same level as the starting team, and that's the real reason. Especially the 4-pack. There was, once Inche came off, the scrum dominance was clearly gone, and evaporated pretty quickly. And Rassie was so desperate, he actually substituted the loose air prop twice in the second half. He put on, what's his name? He subbed it on, he taken off, who was the first guy? Was it Vessels? So anyway, he subbed on Vessels, the hooker, for the reserve prop. So they actually subbed it twice, the reserve prop, and made Malcolm Marx play for 80 minutes, trying to get the loose head side more dominance again, and he couldn't quite do it. And that's, and it's not really, I think, the fatigue, but the All Blacks actually talked about how the fatigue factor was one of the reasons that they they felt confident they were going to win in the second half. And also, Dave Rennie didn't really not too much to talk about. He thinks that just just still got to improve, still got a lot of work to do. The scrum is obviously not something to be celebrating, and then the line out more still got some work there. But just kind of got to continue executing. The rush defense did give them some problem as well, especially in the first half, shutting down that space. And then I think that there is still quite a bit of work to do, and that is the attitude. You don't want to be too overconfident on your win. And again, this I really just the Rassie Erasmus is just such a humble man, and just the way that he talks about a lot of these questions and stuff. He always answers them with a smile, and I just think that he's really humble, and the way that he answers some of these things are really, like, so like, he's apparently admitted that the 6-2 bench backfired. He actually didn't. So like, he's just so humble. Like, he didn't have to like admit that because a lot of the Northerners saying 6-2 could backfire, right? Everyone is warning him that 6-2 could backfire without really understanding that the calculations that's been done for the Springboks, that it's actually really, really difficult for it to backfire. And in fact, the chance of it backfiring is no bigger than having 5-3. And instead of just justifying how it didn't backfire, and he just kind of went, yep, it did backfire. We should have, 6-2 didn't go, things went wrong for us. Even though he technically had 5-3 on the bench with Andrew Esterhazen as an extra back, right? Which is, having an extra center on the bench is pretty standard, right? And I just think it's just so funny. Like, he's like, yeah, it did backfire, right? And even though it backfired because it actually didn't, right? Because he actually did have three reserves, as three back reserves on the bench, but he did concede that he made the mistake of putting the wrong players on when on the field when Kurti Arunsa got injured. He felt like instead of putting Andre on and pushed Jesse Krill onto the win, he should have put you should kept the backline intact with Jesse Krill and Dale Linda, and then maybe put on Grant Williams to the win, and then having what is this called, having maybe what do you call him? Who was the other guy? Who's the halfback? Reinach. Sorry, you put Reinach back in at 9 of Grant Williams to win, because Grant Williams is pretty fast. Even Reinach are winning pretty good, and then you talk about potentially maybe just moving Sacha Fangberg to the wing, and then having maybe Damien Willemse or sorry, Sacha Fangberg to the fullback and for Damien Willemse to the win. You talk about how the mistake is not actually, he actually talked about it's not actually the 6-2 setup, because it's not actually a 6-2 setup. It's actually the problem with how he managed the substitution, the correct substitutions when it was called for. I just think it's really interesting. I just think that it's just he's just like, it's not actually I just think it's the way he talks about things is so very, very interesting. Now, here's another thing that's really interesting as well. Coming to the next match, obviously the Springboks has announced the team for the next game, and obviously I think we all know that with the Springboks, based on how they played New Zealand in previous outings and how they play in a lot of their games, the reason they announced the teams early is because they've already had the team planned weeks in advance. And I do have a feeling that the team that he announced this week is not supposed to be the team that was initially planned. I think this team was supposed to be for Game 3, and the team that was supposed to play in Game 2 is pushed now to Game 3 because they lost the first test. And Rassie wasn't happy with the way that things were, that his team executed in that second half. And I think he wants to build on that. And then I have a feeling that this team that we're seeing this weekend is a modify. It's not supposed to be. It's not the original planned team to go this weekend. There's no way for us to know this, But I just think that based on how the Springboks operated in the last couple of years, 3 years maybe since the World Cup, they always had a different team for the second test, win, lose or draw, and they will bring a different style Whereas they basically said we're going to play the same game plan as we did in the first test. And that is very, very outside of very un-Rassie-like, in my opinion. You can let me know your thoughts on this. So let's have a look at, with that being said, let's have a look at the team that's been announced for this game. And also, for the first time ever, the Springboks announced 24 players for the team. But, you know, the Sia Khaleesi and Paul de Villiers both announced on number 6, but they have confirmed as of now it's going to be Sia Khaleesi. Paul de Villiers is out of the team. But yeah, they have basically, they got Dion Faria 16, and they got Andrew Esterhuizen. Both could also play open side flanker. So you have like 4 open side flanker as well, but named in the team. So classic Rassie. But you know, with Sia Khaleesi confirmed, so now it's actually only 3. And it'll be interesting to see what Dion Faria is gonna do. I'm pretty sure, in my opinion, I think Dion is gonna come off number 8, and they're gonna try to put Esterhuizen at number 6 when he gets on an open side. And the only way I will see Dion Faria to go play at hooker is if there's an injury to Malcolm Marx. Other than that, I don't think that Rassie will have Dion Faria come on as actual hooker for this game, because he's just so good at the breakdown and so good as a loose forward. And I think that they're gonna utilize him as number 8 instead. He did talk about potentially Bungi Bunabi coming back at number 16, but Bungi is still returning from injury, not 100%. I guess not like, you know, he felt like De Jong is the better option for this game as well. And this team is just basically I think it's set up to execute the same game plan in game 1, but just with some additional a little slight tweaks here and there because of injuries, and just bolster it a little bit in some of the areas, in my opinion, to, you know, to really put the vice down, clamp that vice down just a little bit harder for the Springboks team. And also it's going to be, you know, the Toys 100th test, and then Ox and Chase 50th as well. And Sia Khaleesi will take over the captaincy over to Dutoy. So the captaincy has gone to Sia because he's now you know, starting to play at number 6. So anyway, let's look at the team. The first 3 players that are unchanged. Ox Enche coming number 1, Malcolm Marx number 2, Wilco Low comes in at number 3. Ebenezer finished number 4. Ruan Nokia also the same, and number 4, the Thai Fi remains the same from the starting team. Sia Khaleesi comes in number 6 from injury. Peter Dutoy retains number 7 jersey. Yasma Visa, the headbutt machine, was my man of match. I think he was just outstanding. Just so good, so brutal, and just amazing to watch. And yeah, he gets number 8 jersey, hands down. Was just outstanding. Kovis Reinach, it's caught in number 9 as a result of a little bit of niggle, the Springboks call it, to Grant Williams. Number 10, the big return, Andre Pollard. And Rassie did talk about, you know, the clutch moments that he expects Andre Pollard to deliver. Now, you know, I know Andre Pollard's been really good recently for the Springboks, but at the end of the URC season, he hasn't been so good for the Bulls. So we'll have to wait and see. So I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be just brilliant. Yeah, I don't know how this is going to go. But Andre Pollard generally delivers for the Springboks. So he comes in number 10. And this also indicates to me it's going to be more of a kicking game. Static boxing, box kicking, and a lot of potentially penalty goals when it's on offer. Ethan Hooker comes in on number, Ethan not a hooker, comes in number 11. He is replacing Cheslin Kobe, who also has a bit of niggle as well. And Cheslin Kobe is a big loss because he was by far the best player under the high ball, absolute dominations. And the fact that he's not here, it's quite a big loss actually. Damien De Allende comes in number 12, 110th last week. Jesse Crew comes back number 13. Curdy Adensa returns number 14 jersey. He's actually okay. And finally, Damien Willemse, the greatest Springbok in history of Springboks, come back at number 15. I think this is this 4-pack will squeeze even harder than it did last week, and you know, and I think that they will probably lean more towards some penalty goals should it be offered for them. In the replacements, talk about Dion Faria potentially coming on number 8, in my opinion. Another big return, Stinekamp. Stinekamp was already here last week. And the big return is Thomas Dutoy, who wasn't selected last week. I think he's going to make a massive impact on the bench in the second half and really make sure that scrum dominance continues all the way till the 80th minutes. And this is probably the biggest selection return for the Springboks, the most important one. Lou Diacha comes back number 19. Andre Esterhuizen gets number 20. Cameron Hanekom gets number 21 jersey. Morne Vandenberg comes in number 22 from the Lions, from the Cats, and then Sacha Fanberg Ngomezulu comes in at number 23. So yeah, Sacha will be coming on with a potentially different game plan, and and also he has that versatility to replace potentially the fullback if Demi Willemse is running into a bit of trouble. And it's very, very strong, and I think that the All Blacks will have to put up another step forward to try to win this one. And I think that the All Blacks will put another step forward because they have actually talked about, team has not been announced, that they have talked about it's still quite a bit of growth to do, and we have seen it on the week as well. It is revealed that Ethan de Groot probably has some Susie burgers. He was sick coming in this game, so he will be better next week when he comes on in a starting position. But overall, they are still looking at improving for the second test. There was a midweek game. The Cats, the Lions. I just call them the Cat because it seems like. So what happened was when the Cats was disbanded, we, like here in Australia, at least for most of us here, still call the team the Cats for like, I don't know, 10 years or something afterwards, for a very long time, because because the jersey pretty much the same. So I'm sorry if a lot of you guys feel like this is such an outdated reference, but for us, the Cats was alive even when the Cheetahs were in the competition for quite some time after their official name change. So it's just something that for us here in this part of the world. Rico was my man of the match, outstanding, and pretty much the All Blacks was on the verge of losing this game. I know, crazy. And then Rico kind of pulled this one out of the fire, and the All Blacks was leading by 1 point going into the last 2 minutes of the game, and they finally scored to win the match, 41 points to 36. But it was super, super tight, and just outstanding performance from the Cats. So injury update for the All Blacks. Anton Segner has an ankle problem and requires surgery. So yeah, he's been really outstanding for the All Blacks, and he's it's really sad to see that he's have to pull out. The All Blacks have said that they're not going to be replacing anybody for Anton Segner because they feel like with the club games out of the way, they feel like they can just continue with what they have left in the team. They don't need to call anyone up. Tuanga Fassi had a bit of a illness as well, and he was dropped out against the Lions, but he will be staying in the team from the recovery. Anyway, moving on to the Wallabies. So the Wallaby team and Argentinian team has not been announced. It's going to be played on Sunday morning, and it's not announced yet. But the news has come out that Suaalii is on the bench. Yeah, so... But then this could just be injury return protocols because he was injured. And so, it wouldn't be too crazy to have him coming off the bench. And the interesting thing to consider is who is going to come off the bench for? I think that's the most important question. Are they going to try him on a different position? I think maybe Les Kiss is hoping that maybe, by the time he comes on, the game is kind of settled and out of reach potentially, hopefully, in a comfortable position, and maybe try him at a different position, maybe like at fullback or maybe fly half. My hope is that he'll come on a fly half. But anyway, I think if they have, if they put him on as a winger, I will be extremely disappointed, and I'm gonna have a rant because I think that is just disgraceful. That is disgraceful. If you put him on as a winger, that'll just be disgraceful in my opinion. Sometimes they talk about a Ferrari, right? It's kind of like if you work at a farm and then you bought a Ferrari and then your tractor breaks, right? And you can't afford to buy a new tractor, or like your truck, your truck breaks, your ute breaks, and you can't afford to fix the ute because you spend your money on the Ferrari. You know what you have to do? You're going to have to start hauling, the cow shit with the Ferrari to get the job done. And that's what you have to do. You have to get the Ferrari out there. No matter what, you know, do all the dirty work and, you know, like it or not, get the leather a bit stinky to get the job done, because that's what you have to do, right? When you spend all the money on the Ferrari and you can't, you know, replace a ute anymore, you can't replace the truck anymore. That's what you got to do. And I think to you know, you just have to keep pushing and try to get every bit out of it, since you know, this is the only option. And to just put him on the win and have him preserved in the garage is not the way to go about it. Not, you know, you just have to cop the depreciation with the tax office, I guess. You know, that's what you gotta do. Anyway, moving on. The Tristan Riley has been convinced by Larkham to go to, oh boy, to the Rumbies. Oh boy, he's yeah, just like, you know, Meredith. Sorry, not Meredith. Just like, what's his name? Forgot his name already. Oh god, it's what's his name? The Edmund. Just like Tane Edmund, who was convinced to go to the Brumbies and got buried on the bench. Yeah, we'll wait and see. Wait and see, right? But anyway, there was one more thing before we finish. A lot more Australian-born players are now playing the in NPC, which is good. Which is really, really, really good. This is something that I've been calling for quite some time, that the Australian players needs more game time. And I'm really, like, I seriously hope that we could just establish something, like establish like a partnership or something, and just send the Super Rugby players that couldn't make it to the Wallabies to go play in the NPC. But New Zealand probably don't want that, too many of that, because they don't want, you know, their own talent being pushed out of developmental paths. But you know, maybe we could have like maybe one Australian team, maybe a Melbourne team or something. You know, we could bring back the Melbourne Renegades and have them play in the NPC as an Australian team. Maybe that could, you know, it's also just a bit of extra money. You know, the NPC, you get about, you know, $50,000 or something. You know, up to $50,000, not that much. Up to $50,000, you don't guarantee. Around 50,000, 50, 60,000. So a lot of players, after Super Rugby season, they can make some extra coin here as well to, you know, to just get themselves through, and this could help the financial situations for the Australian players as well. So yeah, something to think about. Still, anyway, let me know your thoughts, guys. This is it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the preview. All Blacks versus the Springboks. Cheers.